Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. This is Radio Free Mormon on the air, broadcasting behind enemy lines. Tonight's episode, Radio Free Mormon does London. Yes, I'm here to report on the wonderful trip that I and Wendy had to London between April 10th and April 17th. I've known about this trip since around Christmas time of last year. A wonderful listener or listeners to this show wanted to reach out and do something special for Radio Free Mormon, and this is what it was. And I want to thank them very much. I want to dedicate this podcast to them with a big thank you from me and a big thank you from Wendy. It was an amazing time. I had the best vacation of my entire life in London. I found out that London is like Disneyland for grown-ups, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. I took a bunch of pictures. Some of them turned out better than others. Others are a little bit small and a bit grainy, but I've collected them here in what ended up being a much more laborious process than I had anticipated putting together this slideshow. It is also made a little more unfortunate because I had about 3 video clips that are not playing on this. In the end, that may be for the best. But there are 97 slides in this show. I am very mindful of the fact that slideshows are notorious for being incredibly boring. I'm going to try and avoid that as best I can tonight and do these in record time, knowing that you can always go back and freeze frame or look at these photos again if you should desire. But here is the title page of this slideshow, the Radio Free Mormon London trip, April 10th through 17th, 2024. This picture I will explain later, but if you know what this is, you know what this is. This is actually from, I'll go ahead and explain it now. The Eye, the London Eye, this huge Ferris wheel, which is actually a different thing than a Ferris wheel. It's not with little carts that you sit in and swing back and forth and scare me to death when I'm up high on Ferris wheels. I don't know about you, but I find them terrifying. But this is no swinging, no back and forth, but stationary pod that multiple people can fit in. You can see a bunch of them in my pod. I'm taking this picture. And to the left, you can see upriver on the Thames. And to the right, you can see downriver on the Thames. But there's no swinging back and forth. They're very firmly fixed into place. And for some reason, even though it was much higher than any Ferris wheel I've ever been in, I felt much more secure, had a wonderful time. All right, so let's get started, shall we? The first slide has a picture of the solar eclipse on April 8th. That was 2 days before we left for London. I was a little bit concerned that Jesus might really come back, as had been predicted and prophesied about this date in relation to this eclipse. I was very glad to find out that he did not, and therefore the trip to London was not indefinitely postponed. We flew on British Airways, absolute top-notch first class, never done this before. Look at these seats. You can actually lie down in these seats. You can put your feet up. It's amazing. Here I am on the left. Here's Wendy on the right. I not only have never ridden first class like this before, I didn't even know that this kind of thing was possible. I didn't know it existed before. It was absolutely amazing. And it's certainly a much better way to pass the time on a 10 to 11 hour trip between SeaTac Airport and Heathrow Airport in England. So there we are. Absolutely amazing. There's even a screen you can play some movies. That is a screenshot from one of the Mission Impossible movies, I think. And in the foreground, this is the kind of food that we were served. Isn't it incredible? It's absolutely amazing. Over on the right, here's a little bubbly, some nuts. It was absolutely top notch. Then on Thursday, April 11th, now we lost time going from SeaTac to London. So in addition to the 11 hours or so that the airplane trip took, there's an 8-hour time difference. So it ended up being 19 hours just between SeaTac and Heathrow, accounting for that time difference. So we left on Wednesday evening and we got there on Thursday around noon. We were picked up at Heathrow Airport and then taken to this wonderful, wonderful hotel room, the Rembrandt, in downtown London. There are a couple of pictures of the lodgings. We arrived on Thursday, April 11th. There were a few issues that had to be taken care of with the room, and we ended up getting settled and ready to go out on the town in late afternoon, early evening on Thursday, April 11th. So there we are. This actually is across the street. On the left-hand side, it was down the block a bit and across the street, that incredible church. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's a Catholic church. And I remember that Wendy had sent a picture of this to one of her kids, her adult kids. And the question came back, is that St. Paul's Cathedral? And we looked at it, and the thing is, in London, yes, that's absolutely gorgeous, but St. Paul is like 10 times bigger than that. But sure, without a frame of reference, that could be St. Paul's Cathedral, couldn't it? This goes to show how big, how beautiful everything is, especially architecture. In London, they love the architecture. They love displaying wonderful architecture, and it's just incredible walking around and looking at the buildings that they have there over here on the right. This is an old bookstore that Wendy is standing next to. It had already closed for the night by the time we were getting out and about on Thursday. There I am. This is actually a still frame from a video I made, which is not playing. And it basically says, well, this is Radio Free Mormon here in London. It's a beautiful night, wonderful place to be. And in the background, you can see that Catholic church again. Not, repeat, not St. Paul's Cathedral. And down the block from us on the same side of the street, this is a few blocks, is this absolutely famous department store called Harrods, Harrods. And here is the corner of it with, you can see the name of it on it. And this takes up an entire block. It is absolutely huge and amazing. We went inside that evening, although I don't think we bought anything, and probably for good reason. Like, it's so expensive. Look at this place. So on the left, you have, and on the right, you have escalators. And these escalators in the building are so done up. Look at how they are decorated to look like ancient Egyptian escalators, or at least you're riding an escalator through ancient Egyptian architecture. Absolutely amazing. Look at that stuff. And then also on the bottom floor, I think this was down in the basement that we went down, they have an actual Triceratops skull that is there and on display in Harrods. And this, if you look up here to the top as you're on those escalators, it's not just all around you on the sides, it's above you too that they have this incredible decoration. And they had this wonderful Egyptian scene made out of stained glass and illuminated from behind. And this is on the ceiling above. And that's why I wanted to get a couple of pictures of those. Absolutely gorgeous inside of Harrods. Then we went to eat. We found a Chinese restaurant. It was called the Good Earth Restaurant, appropriately enough. And there's Wendy, and there I am. This was the best Chinese food I think I had ever had in my life. And that's what I told them as I was leaving. This was the best Chinese food ever. Can't recommend it highly enough. Now it goes to Friday, April 12th, 2014. And I have a picture here of a double-decker bus. This is a bit grainy. I enlarged it somewhat, but ironically, if you can look on the side of it, it says the Book of Mormon Musical. There's no way you can see that from here. I know that, so I'm telling you. It says Book of Mormon Musical. There's a picture of a missionary there. You can see the dark pants maybe. And that was a foreshadowing, since we had tickets to go see the Book of Mormon Musical, but that wouldn't be until the following Monday. What we did this day was we got up, we went down to the restaurant in the hotel. We ate a typical English breakfast, which we decided to do only once after we'd had that typical English breakfast. We never went down there for breakfast again, but it was typical. It was English. We had the experience. Yeah, I can only take so much spotted dick, I suppose. Regardless of that, what we decided to do was we followed the advice that we'd gotten from a number of friends, which is the first day in London, grab one of these tour buses, these double-decker red tour buses. They'll take you around. They'll show you all the main sites, and then you can take notes of them as you're doing it. You can get off any place you want, but if you go through the entire tour, you can look at all the things and decide what you want to come back to later and explore more thoroughly. So that's what we're getting ready to do here. And that's what we're doing here. So this is what these buses look like. We were on the second story of a bus, the top floor. I don't know what you call it on a bus. Anyway, we're up there on the top, so we can see around pretty well. The weather was really nice that day. Here we are in a selfie up on top of the bus going through London and seeing the sights. Here we have the National Gallery, which actually you can't see in this picture. If you look at the big picture over here on the right, the National Gallery is immediately to the left. Okay, this is the plaza of the National Gallery. This is how great my photography skills are. And over here on the left in the smaller picture is the Thames. And you can see off in the distance there, you can see the eye. See that big Ferris wheel shape kind of thing? That's the eye. That's how far away you can see it. That's how big it is. Now, here we are going over the Tower Bridge. That's on the left, not the right. This is a bridge that we got the message on, the lesson on, that lots of tourists think this is London Bridge, but actually it's Tower Bridge. London Bridge now after the original, I think, had been moved to Lake Havasu in Arizona. It is now the next bridge over, and it is also nowhere near as fancy as this bridge. London Bridge, I believe, had been the original bridge to the city when there was only one. And this isn't it. This is the Tower Bridge. All right, so we're going over the Tower Bridge, and this is a beautiful shot. I cannot remember exactly what this picture is on the right, and I apologize, but I put it here as an illustration of the incredible buildings they have everywhere in London that we are going. It's just absolutely amazing, the architecture. And here we drove by, or were driven by, Westminster, and you can see it there. There's a beautiful, beautiful tower here in Westminster that is very recognizable, and we were driven through this area. I'm not going to be a tour guide here, by the way. Take what I say with a grain of salt, because I'm not a tour guide by profession. I was trying to learn as best as I could while I've got the little earphones in my ear, the little earbuds, listening to the pre-recorded tour as we go on the bus. So don't take my word for this. If I get something wrong, please forgive me. I've already misidentified this as Winchester, I think, in a prior podcast where I was just referencing it. No, it's Westminster. It's not Winchester, it's Westminster. And this is, I think, where it was that lots of royal weddings happened, including the wedding of Princess Di and Prince Charles back in the day. Actually, back when I was on my mission in Japan, they got married. We got off the bus at one point during the day because we wanted to see the Tower of London. This is one of the early buildings in London, one of the original towers in London. And here on the left, you can see it over that wall. The tower itself is actually, oh, there it is in the bottom right with the picture with me. That is the tower itself. And it has now been enclosed within different fortifications, which themselves have been enclosed with more fortifications, which themselves have been, you get the idea. It's incredibly difficult to access unless, of course, you buy a ticket, and then you can walk right in. But that is where they have all sorts of things. Now, the Tower of London, I want to say, is known to me, and I think known to a lot of people, for pretty much one reason and one reason only, and that's because of all the people that they had imprisoned there or executed there. But it was more than just a place to imprison people. They had a lot of things that were going on here in the Tower of London and in this complex, things that were very, very important and things that they wanted to protect by the fortification, including having an armory, including having a mint where they could make coins, including a number of other things that were very, very important and needed to be protected. And this is also where the crown jewels are. They're not in the tower, they're in another building. It's part of this complex. That's how well fortified this place is. And here is inside the tower, inside that one building that I'm standing in front of outside. There's a number of floors. And here down the bottom left is a piece of artwork that somebody made of a huge dragon guarding barrels of gunpowder. In the middle, you see some of the cannons themselves that are cast and held there. And up above those, you see muskets or rifles of some sort. And over here on the right, there's a throne inside. Now, this part on the right, you don't need to know this, but this isn't part of the tower. It's part of another room that's outside the tower, but where the kings had their lodgings, and there's a throne. And over here, this is the Tower of London. Here's a picture of both of us with some of the fortifications in the background. Okay, so that's all for the tower. That was a long day at the tower, and we got back on a bus, and we had all sorts of issues, largely caused by me, I think, trying to get on the right bus to get us back to the right place. Eventually, we got there. We got back to the Rembrandt, to our room, and that night, we decided we were going to go out. And actually, I can't even remember where we go out, so I'll be as surprised as you when we go through this. But down there on the left, that's where we wait for the elevator. We were on the second floor. And on the right, that is the name of the hotel. And we're posing outside. We had this wonderful fellow who was, I think he was the chief concierge, and he was super, super helpful. And I believe he's the one who took this picture for us. So thank you again for taking that picture. Then that's what we did. We went out for dinner. We found a place. We went to a pub, and the pub didn't have really much food that we were interested in. I think it was I that was interested in having steak, but they were able to direct us to another location that was actually right behind them on the same street. And it's called the Hawksmoor Knightsbridge Steakhouse. Isn't that like the coolest name of a steakhouse ever? The Hawksmoor Knightsbridge Steakhouse. Either one of those would be cool enough. Put them together, you got double cool. And there, Wendy is having some kind of an adult beverage. I can't vouch for what it is. Oh, we got bad news on the doorstep also. On or around this day, we found out that unfortunately, O.J. Simpson had passed away, and someone had sent me this text commemorating the event, saying, "Now O.J. can rest, knowing his wife's killer is dead." Saturday, April 13th, 2024, we got up, we walked down the sidewalk, and we passed different shops that had absolutely incredible looking delicacies inside. Here is a pastry shop. You can't see these too closely. Trust me, they look incredible. I didn't actually buy any because they looked that incredible. Just looking at them, I gained 3 pounds. But we did go to another store called, okay, so I wasn't completely chaste and virtuous about the candy, just those pastries. Over here at the Kingdom of Sweets, this incredible candy store. And you can see the owner of it there on the left, the owner and proprietor. She was very, very nice. Just candy coming out the ears. They even have on the right, you can see a pick and mix place where the candy is just out there in the open. And you can use scoops to put them into your bag. Absolutely amazing place. I did eat some candy that we got there, but most of the candy that we got there, I want you to know, went to kids. Yeah, as little favors, mementos of our trip to London. So they could say RFM and Wendy went to London and all we got was this stupid piece of candy. But let me tell you, there's nothing stupid about the English candy, especially the chocolate. It's absolutely out of this world. All right. So on the left, this is simply another picture of a building that could be made so simply, so much easier. And yet, everywhere you look, they are complicating things with the architecture, making things more difficult than they have to be, and making things much more lovely and interesting in the architecture than they have to be. I took this picture from the other end of Harrods so you can see how big this store is. That's Harrods in the background there. It takes an entire block up. It's absolutely amazing. I suppose you could spend an entire week in Harrods just looking around, but we just spent the one evening. Okay. Now it is Saturday. We have tickets. I mentioned that we have tickets on Monday to the Book of Mormon musical. On Saturday afternoon, we have tickets that I'm really excited about as well. And it is to go to a production called The Player Kings. It is at a theater in West End. It's the Noel Coward Theater. It is a Shakespearean drama, and it stars Ian McKellen as John Falstaff. As I looked at it closer, I started understanding that this is actually a combination of two Shakespeare plays. It is Henry IV, parts 1 and part 2 put together and edited judiciously in order to make it something you can sit through. Even so, it was 4 hours long, including the intermission. So this was a very long afternoon of Shakespeare, but it was absolutely fantastic and incredible. And here we are in front of the Rembrandt, dressed up and getting ready to grab a black cab to go to the show. Okay, so here's the ride in the black cab. You see a lot of black cabs in London. Yeah, we got a black cab and we are going to the show and we are very, very excited. We get finally to the West End, which is, I think, the London version of Broadway. It's where all these theaters are that have the great shows. And on the left, you can see the sign that says Ian McKellen, Player Kings, Shakespeare, and then underneath it, Robert Ickey. I believe he was the actor who played Prince Hal. And over on the right there is RFM standing by the sign. You can see and probably recognize even from here the face of Ian McKellen, Player Kings. We actually were so lucky because of the listeners or listener to the show that donated this gift to us, including these tickets and including the fact that we got treated like VIPs. We were ushered up to a special room inside the theater where we got to wait for the show to start and got to wait during intermission as well. Yes, there was an intermission. That was important to have during 4 hours of Shakespeare. But here we are in this room waiting, and you can see these delicacies, these hors d'oeuvres on these plates. One here in the foreground, one over there, back further where I'm standing. It's absolutely amazing and fantastic the way we got treated. It was just an incredible trip. I've got to tell you, I've never experienced anything like it in my life. I don't ever expect to experience anything like it again. But I am going to commemorate it here with this slideshow, so I should never forget. Now, inside the theater, this is the Noel Coward Theater. We had wonderful seats. We were in the balcony. We were toward the front, unobstructed view. I think probably pretty much every seat in the house is a good seat. It's a rather small, intimate theater, even though there are balconies. It doesn't go back too far or too deeply away from the stage. And this is basically looking to the left from where we are, to the center, and to the right in that order. Here we are. There's another selfie, me and Wendy at the theater. I took a shot up here of the dome at the top of the theater, and it was an absolutely incredible experience, as I mentioned. Now, here is the final curtain, which happened around 6 or 6:30 at the end of the play, of course, when the final curtain takes place. And there in the middle, you can see Ian McKellen. He is looking much more rotund than he usually does because John Falstaff is, of course, a big fat character. Ian McKellen is not a big fat man. I've never seen him as anything other than very, very lean. So they had to put a lot of stuffing on him or prosthetics to make him look as if he were much larger than he actually is. But that is Ian McKellen there in the center, having played John Falstaff. It was an absolutely fantastic play. I was deeply moved at the end by the relationship between Prince Hal and John Falstaff, even though I know what's going to come. And even though I know that Prince Hal is going to be made king upon the death of his father, and he's going to disown John Falstaff, still, it was very, very powerful, the way it was blocked and the way it was performed. But after it was over, we came out of the theater. It's early evening, and we decided to go find a place to have a bite to eat. And we happened upon Gordon Ramsay's street burger place. So we went inside. These are pictures from inside this restaurant where we indeed had a street burger. It was very, very good. It was very, very crowded. The picture of me doesn't seem to do justice to how crowded it was, or at least it seemed to be at one point. There it looks kind of empty, but it was certainly very noisy. We're in the middle of the city. Everything is exciting. Everything is going. There's a lot of electricity and a lot of energy going on, which I had really not experienced much of anymore, never having really lived in a major city. But after this, we went outside, and this is also part of a video clip, which is not going to play. Nope, not going to play. Anyway, there's a huge square outside, and this was very close to and maybe adjacent to Chinatown. So we saw Chinatown. You see the pictures here, readily identifiable as Chinatown. Over here on the right, you have an individual giving rides to different people. It's a version of a taxi on a bicycle pulling a cart. And here are some other pictures of that evening in Chinatown. Here we have on the left, you have Wendy in front of this beautiful, beautiful Chinese arch. And here's a red phone booth, which they have everywhere in London. Some of them actually seem to work, though most of them are not working anymore. Very identifiable as a landmark or as a signal that you are in London. And here's another picture of the arch. And over here on the right is a beautiful statue. They have statues everywhere in London. And I apologize because I cannot remember who this statue is of, but there it is for your viewing enjoyment. Oh, here I am in Chinatown. Yep. And here I am next to the phone booth. Then Sunday, April 14th, 2024, the London Eye. We get up, we head into the heart of London, and we go on this London Eye. And this is the picture that we started with, or is it? What I did with this picture, I took two panorama shots, each of them around 180 degrees, and then I took them, put them up here, and then I overlaid them so it looks like there's only one. If you look really closely in the middle, you can see where the seam is. There's a bit of a change of color between the right and the left, but regardless, this ends up becoming one complete circular 360-degree shot inside the London Eye. And there it is from the outside. It's absolutely gigantic, especially on this shot in the middle from the river. You can see it in comparison to the boats and the houses and the buildings, how big this incredible London Eye is. There's Wendy inside, way up high. Here's some views of the city in the middle, and on the right, that's looking up the River Thames and looking down on the Houses of Parliament, which are not very far, obviously, from the London Eye itself. So there's the Houses of Parliament in Westminster. On the far right, you can see Big Ben, which is the clock in the tower, which is Elizabeth Tower. Big Ben, this is another thing that tourists have to learn. Big Ben is not the tower. Big Ben is the clock in the tower. The tower is called the Elizabeth Tower. There we go. And that's just an incredible picture of this incredible building in this incredible city. So we took a walk along the Thames. We had to get something to eat after that experience in the London Eye. And here are a couple of pictures inside this place where we got a bite to eat. I think I had fish and chips. Yes, I did, because If you're going to go to London, you got to have fish and chips at least once. And I think I had them once. Here's some other pictures as we're walking along the Thames. And you can see here I am. There's pictures of both of us, picture of Wendy, but in the background, you will see those Houses of Parliament and each of them from different angles, including the Elizabeth Tower and Big Ben as well. Along this walk, they had a wall, and the wall is on the other side of the walk from the river. But for the length of it that we walked, it was the National COVID Memorial Wall. And you see all of these hundreds of hearts. Each of them have different names written inside of them, signifying a different person who died from COVID. This wall with hearts as dense as this goes for a mile in both directions from this sign. It is all up and down the river as we walked. Now, here's the other tower in left and right pictures. You can see the other tower that's on the other end of Westminster and the Houses of Parliament, the other end of them from the Elizabeth Tower and Big Ben. And in the middle, I put this beautiful statue, which is of an eagle. It's gilt. It looks absolutely gorgeous. This is along the river. It's a different location than the other pictures, but what the heck. And this is also going along the Houses of Parliament. Look at the incredible detail in the architecture. And here is a huge, beautiful statue of Richard I, Richard the Lionheart. It's incredible, this statue, okay? But then again, they have incredible statues everywhere. It's just like this overabundance of statues, overabundance of beauty, overabundance of incredible architecture that they have in the city. It's absolutely amazing. Oh, here I am in the bottom left. And once again, behind me, you see Big Ben on Elizabeth Tower on north end of Westminster. So there's the north end of Westminster. You see Big Ben behind me. And on the right, this is actually me standing at the very base of the Elizabeth Tower looking up to Big Ben. And at this angle, you can just barely see at the top that there's a clock face there. But this is a picture from an angle looking directly up Elizabeth Tower to Big Ben on the right. Then I wanted to go on a boat. I wanted to go on the Thames, and they have a lot of different boats that you can use for that. What we did was we got a Uber boat, and the Uber boat actually functions as a taxi, and it runs pretty much continuously. I'm sure that it stops at some point at night and starts at some point in the morning, like most bus systems do. But this Uber boat goes up and down the Thames, and it stops at various locations on either side of the river at docks that are prepared, and people can get on and they can get off. And I think it's a huge commute vehicle, but we used it, as many others did, as a tourist opportunity to be able to go and see different sites. It was absolutely fantastic for that purpose. And we got this incredible view of Tower Bridge. Remember, Tower Bridge, not London Bridge, but we had already gone over it. We'd seen it from different sides, but now we actually got to see it from the water. And we went under it as well as other bridges. And here on the left, you can see this wonderful view we have of Tower Bridge. And here's a couple more shots as we're going under Tower Bridge. And these incredibly huge pylons, or whatever it is you want to call them, that the bridge is built upon and that are sunk down into and below the river for support. On the right, I waited and I waited and I waited until I could get that shot exactly right. And then I clicked it right in the middle of the two towers of Tower Bridge. You can see in the far distance another tower, and that is the Shard, is the name of the building. This is an office building. It's a living building. I think it's basically its own sort of biosphere. It's sort of its own city inside of a building is the idea, and it's called a Shard because of the architectural design. So there's the Shard in the distance. You can sure see the Shard from pretty much anywhere in London if you have an unobstructed view. And here's some more shots going under Tower Bridge and getting an idea for the size of this bridge. And just looking at it from this angle gave me a completely different perspective, which I guess you would expect. This part was also a video, unfortunately, and I can't play it here, but it basically shows what it was like being on this Uber boat or Uber boat going up and down the river for a short space. It really had powerful engines, and they could just rev that thing up and go fast down the river. Oh, here I am. This is on the back of this Uber boat going up and down the Thames, and on the right there I am with Wendy. Absolutely beautiful day, cloudy, little chilly. We got coats for that, but it wasn't raining. It was absolutely fantastic. And then we passed the old Royal Naval College in Greenwich, England. We were passing all sorts of incredible landmarks on this ride. We didn't get off here, but we did get a picture of it. And I think this is the place that features prominently in the second Thor movie, if I'm not mistaken. All right, there's a place that we did get off, the Uber boat, and that was where the Globe Theater is located. We actually saw it coming down, and we'd stopped at this place, and only as we were pulling away did we see it was the Globe Theater, and I thought, "Oh, I wanted to get off there." Well, too late. So we had to ride the Uber boat down to the end of the line, downstream on the Thames River, and then wait for it to come back around. And we took it back around and came back up to this location again. And we got off at the Globe Theater, of course, being a replica of the theater in the same location and looking the same as the theater of William Shakespeare, who owned this theater and had his plays produced there. Now, on the exact opposite side of the Globe Theater, this is interesting for comparison purposes. On the left, you see a shot of the Globe Theater. On the right, you can see what you see looking the opposite direction from the Globe Theater. If you turn around, this is what you see. You're on the Thames, and over on the other side is this massively built up and incredibly architectured downtown section of London, England. There was a beautiful, I keep saying that. Sorry, there's so much that was beautiful here in London. But there was this beautiful pub. We actually didn't end up eating there because we chose someplace else instead. Upper left, you can see the Shard. See the Shard in the upper left of the upper left picture? And this is just gorgeous. It's called the Anchor Pub, and these are a bunch of different shots of the Anchor Pub. On the left, you can see there's this huge mural, beautiful mural of William Shakespeare, which I took a picture of me standing there, by which I mean Wendy took a picture of me standing there. That would be about the longest selfie you've ever seen in your life, unless I'm using some kind of a drone. In the middle is a ship that is an actual ship from hundreds of years ago that they have dry docked, and it's there for tourist purposes. It's also along this walk that's along the Thames and in the neighborhood of the Globe Theater. We walked up and down a bit, and here's a beautiful place coming through a tunnel and out of an archway and into another location along this walk. On the left is a piece of old building with an actual window. It doesn't have the glass in it anymore, but this rose, I think it's called a rose window, that beautiful big circular piece at the top of that wall. And then on the right, I got a picture of some of the older architecture with, once again, the Shard in the background, which is way, way, way in the background. It just looks so big because it's huge. And then we went to eat at an Italian restaurant that was nearby, also on that side of the Thames. You can see Wendy beyond her is the Thames, and there I am. I'm goofing around in the bathroom because of the lighting. I thought it was kind of fun. That's all I'm doing. But this is an Italian restaurant. It's called ZZ, Z-I-Z-Z-I, ZZ Italian Restaurant, where we had a wonderful dinner after our Uber ride up and down the river, and then our walk in and around the Globe Theater. After this, we went and grabbed a black cab to take us back to the hotel, where we went down to the bar, and we had a drink or two to celebrate the end of this wonderful day. Next day is Monday, April 15th, 2024, the Victoria and Albert Museum. Yes, I totally took this picture myself. This one I grabbed off the internet. It's absolutely gorgeous. Everything is so beautiful in London. It's amazing. So here we have this incredible structure, which is the Victoria and Albert Museum. We spent several hours there on Monday morning on April 15th. And here's a few of the things inside. Halls, beautiful. Everything's so gorgeous. Everything's so well appointed. Here is just a staircase in this museum. And I wanted to get a picture of it so you could see the incredible tile work in the steps, on the landings of this staircase. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Everything in this museum is absolutely amazing. And here on the left is a picture that they had painted on the wall. It had been painted many, many years ago, and apparently it was out in some place where it was subject to the light, so it had faded some. They brought it inside and they put it in a location where it was not exposed to any more outside light, so it would not fade anymore. And then across the top of it, you can see that this is a semicircle. Across the top of that semicircle, you can look to the right and see all of these different paintings that were made inside that arch going over the top of this painting, the main painting. It's amazing. Here we are inside another part of the museum. There is a pillar here on the left. That is the same pillar that you see there in the middle. It is absolutely gigantic, this pillar, and they have more than one. On the right, there is an owl that is much smaller, and it's on a table in a hallway. And this is the interior courtyard of the Victoria Albert Museum. That is also beautiful. I'm glad I got this picture because, as it turns out, yes, the 360-degree revolving picture that I took of the interior of the courtyard is not going to play. But this is what it looks like. So there. Here's some more interior shots of the museum. On the bottom left, look at this pillar. And I took this shot with people below. You can see them standing there to give it perspective so you can see how absolutely gigantic this pillar is. And then there's other pictures that show other aspects of the museum, though only a few. On the bottom right is this huge, intricate, glass-worked piece of art that is hanging in the main rotunda of the museum. And when I say the main rotunda, I should say it's the rotunda that is there when you come in. This is the entry lobby below. Here are some more shots from inside the museum. Once again, that pillar with me in front on the left. And over here on the right is another semicircular painting, which is much smaller. It's on the wall. And as I recall, this is a painting that was done in order to show how brightly hued the original and much larger painting had been when it was new. Here's an incredible sculpture from the museum. They had tons of incredible sculptures. This is Samson about to give the coup de grace to one of the Philistines, and you'll see he's holding in his hand, that is the jawbone of the ass. So that's how you know it is Samson about to do in a Philistine. That night, we got to have dinner with Nemo the Mormon and Peter Bleakley. This was at a Mexican restaurant, and Wendy and I went to see them and meet them on our way to the Book of Mormon musical. We got to have a wonderful dinner together with those two legends, Nemo and Peter Bleakley. What wonderful, wonderful people. We had a fantastic time. Once again, there was a video here I was going to play because in the middle of this, Nemo popped out his camera, put it on a tripod, set it on the table, and we talked for about 5 minutes. Nemo has put that up on his channel. I have put it on my Facebook page. So if you want to see it, you can see it there. This is just going to be a still frame because the video doesn't play. Here we are on the left getting ready to go to the Book of Mormon musical, and that's what it looks like in London. This is the Prince of Wales Theater, I believe it is. Yeah, it says it right there in the middle, Prince of Wales. You can see it under the Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon musical, we had an incredible evening. It was every bit as enjoyable, if not more enjoyable than the Shakespeare, but in a completely different way. Yep, Book of Mormon. It's still light when we get there. The other pictures that are dark, we actually took after the show was over. And here I am standing in front of the poster outside the building. This is what it looked inside the building, the Prince of Wales Theater. They have this wonderful scrim for the Book of Mormon musical with those clouds on it and the proscenium that looks like a temple and has a rotating, at some points it will rotate and have this beautiful light shining on it. Moroni statue above it. So those are the pictures of the scrim. They're blue. You can also see down here, bottom right, what it looked like from our spot, our seats, which were incredible. They were right there on the front of the balcony, and we had wonderful, wonderful seats. And up here on the right, you can see it from a different angle looking left from our seats. And there we are. Wendy is ready to go in that beautiful blue dress. On the right are pictures that were taken during the intermission of the show. And you can see that Wendy was a little bit cold in her dress, so she was using my jacket for these pictures. Then on the bottom left, this is right before the beginning of Act 2 at the end of the intermission. And on the right is the curtain call, all the characters giving their bows to standing ovation. At least I know I was standing, and a lot of other people were too. Okay. I want to tell you this, that I had a very, very strange experience. I mean, a very personal experience watching this on two levels. The first thing is that even though it is incredibly suggestive and offensive to many people, and I can understand why, they're not making fun of the missionaries' intent. They represent the missionaries as really, really wanting to do what it is that they think is right, and that they are, in their own minds, heroes and being valiant and true and sacrificing a great deal for what they believe is right. And what that happened is, as I'm watching that, it took me back to being a missionary and feeling those same feelings because that's how they're portraying them. And I thought, this is really, really making me remember things that I'd forgotten and don't know if I would have remembered them otherwise. So very thankful and grateful to this musical for that. Of course, it was also a musical. There was dancing, there was tap dancing by the missionaries. So it was a double whammy because that made me think about my time as a dancer and my time in musical theater back in the 20s, especially. My 20s, not the 1920s. My 20s were in the 1980s. My 60s are in the 2020s. That's why it's confusing. But yeah, that hit me hard too, because it was like I'm being taken back to a time when I had a different identity, different passions, different interests. And well, it's been a while. It's a long time ago. It's in the past. So all those things were coming together and really making this wonderful show that I laughed at until I cried. And so did Wendy, because she's been with me long enough that she got the jokes. Um, Made it very moving as well. Okay, enough said about that. Now, this is after the show is over. And on the right, you can see that's the Prince of Wales Theater. You can see it's closed. And in the middle, there is a shot down the street. I think they were celebrating Ramadan, is what they had said. And so they have a bunch of illuminated decorations that are hanging over the street. And then up here on the left is another building across the street from the Prince of Wales Theater. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Everywhere you look, it's beautiful. So now it's Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. It's our last day in London, and we're going to see what we can do. I wanted to go and see the Sherlock Holmes Museum. Over there on the left, you can see 221B Baker Street with a real, actual, authentic Bobby, which I'm taking a picture next to, or Wendy's taking a picture of me next to. And then just on the right of that is the Sherlock Holmes Museum. But we went for a tour inside the 221B Baker Street. And over here on the left, there is a bust of Sherlock Holmes. And on the right, that's me standing inside this room where they have a lot of wax figures. To the right is Sherlock Holmes. And I think that on the other side of me, the person that Sherlock Holmes is speaking to, I think that must be Watson. And then sitting at the table is the wax figure of Jabez Wilson, who is one of the main characters in the short story, The Red-Headed League. That's why he has red hair. The Red-Headed League is a story, I believe, in which Professor Moriarty is introduced. Yes, the Napoleon of crime, Professor Moriarty, and he had his own figure in another corner of this room. And here I am looking at whatever it is that the figure of Sherlock Holmes is looking at. I don't think I'm looking at exactly the same thing. I tried, but it looks like it's a bit off. Anyway, we're both obviously concentrating very heavily. I went to the museum that was next door that I showed you a picture of. I got this beautiful reproduction of a picture. There we go. I think you can see it now that the light is off of the plastic. It is a picture and illustration of the publication, The Hound of the Baskervilles. And there is Sherlock Holmes putting 5 rounds into the flank of the beast, hopefully before it can finish off the person he's working on, who was it Sir Henry Baskerville? I can't remember, but it might be. Anyway, I love that picture. I thought it was great. I had to have it, and I wanted to show it with you. And the other thing I got at the place, the museum, which is actually more of a, I don't know, the tourist shop, is a pipe. It's a pipe, yes. So there we are. There we go. It's a pipe, and yeah, I think I look really a lot like Sherlock, like Sherlock Holmes with this pipe. Anyway, it wasn't that expensive, thank goodness, but I thought it would be a nice addition. It's kind of me, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna put this back into the pouch for now. I want to make sure I showed that to you because I am doing this entire slideshow for 3 main reasons. The first is because it's a huge thank you to those people who made this possible. Second, because I was hoping that you would like to see what I did and come along with me and maybe participated a bit virtually. And third, because when I do this show and show you the things that I bought there at England, such as the pipe and the picture and the different expenses that came out of pocket, such as meals and cab fare and such, that then I am totally entitled to deduct those things. And I think that my accountant would agree with me. Of course, he's doing 5 to 10 in Leavenworth now, so I'll have to call him when he gets out. Going back to these screens, we're at slide 83, which means we only have a few more to go. The pipe and the picture. Oh, this was supposed to remind me in case I forgot to do the pipe. Yes. And the picture. All right. I remembered without those remindings. Okay. And this is also the same room with the figures in it. And then we went over to get something to eat at this place called the Dorset Brasserie. This is downtown. This is just off of Baker Street, where we were at the Sherlock Holmes Museum. And there's some of the food that we got. Wendy likes to take pictures of food. She is in the food industry. And then that evening, we decided we were going to take a chance, and we took the underground unsupervised. We tried to figure it out a little bit before. We rode it a bit before, but now we're going to try and ride it on the way to a tour. And this is a Jack the Ripper tour that we had gotten tickets to online. It says where it is it's going to meet and pick up at, and it was at a station. And we had to get from where we were located to this station. And we had quite the adventure on the underground that evening, because even though we had figured out which train we needed to be on to get from A to B, from where we were to the place where the tour is going to start, we had enough time to make it there. It was getting a little bit tight, but we had time. And we went on this train, and it went from stop to stop to stop. And at the point that it was the next stop was going to be where the tour was, all of a sudden it was announced that was the end of the line and it wasn't going to go any further. But we needed it to go one more stop. So we got off the train because it wasn't going any further. We walked around a bit. We talked to somebody. We found another train that looked like the right train. We got on just before it was leaving. The next stop was exactly where we were supposed to be. We got off. We went to the left because you could go to the left or to the right, depending upon which exit it was that you were trying to get out of. We did know it was exit 3. But there was no markings. So we went left. We walked about a quarter of a mile. Maybe it was only 100 yards, but it seemed like a quarter of a mile. And time is ticking down. We went to the left, got up there, and looked up the stairs, and it said exits 1 and 2. At which point I thought, okay, if this is 1 and 2, then 3 and 4 must be in the opposite direction. So we had to retrace our steps down to the middle, continue all the way out the other side. It said 3 and 4. We started walking up the steps to 3. When we got to the very top of the steps, the second of 7:30, or whenever it was that the tour started, hit. And we came up, we saw a bunch of people with a tour guide, and they said, "Are you here for the Jack the Ripper tour?" We said, "Yes." And they said, "Good, because we're just starting." Boom, baby. Oh, yeah. That was an excellent adventure. And of course, it's excellent because we made it on time. If we'd been 5 minutes later, we would have been screwed. We would have had no idea where the group had gone, and we would have just wandered about aimlessly ourselves, I guess. But we did make it to the tour. And here is a picture of the tour on the left and on the right. Now you can see on the left that it's actually a little bit light out. So this tour took around an hour and a half. And you can see the tour guide, he's got a mechanism there. He's flashing up old pictures on different flat surfaces so we can see them as he talks about them. He did an incredible job. Here on the right, you can see it's getting a bit later, and he's talking to the tour. He'd walk along, and we'd stop at a place, and he'd gather us around, and he'd give his spiel. And sometimes he'd show pictures. He was very, very interesting to listen to. I learned a lot that night. But the thing that was really amazing to me that night, it was like a spiritual experience I had, which is we're walking along the streets, and this is the east end of London, not the west end. So this is a bit of a rougher neighborhood than the West End. And of course, it was back in Jack the Ripper's day, too. So we're walking along through the streets of the East End doing this tour. And we came through what was a very narrow street. And all of a sudden, coming around this corner, there was this beautiful, huge pub. It was nighttime. The skies were beautiful because it had been raining off and on. It continued to rain off and on during the tour. But what that did to the skies was make this an incredible shade of blue at the places where they cleared up. And you could see stars coming through. And I've got some pictures that actually come close to capturing that in a minute. What I wanted to share with you is that coming around this corner, huge pub, lit from inside, absolutely gorgeous. And all of a sudden, it was as if I were taken back in time 130 years or 140 years to the time when we are talking about on the tour, which is 1888, which was in Jack the Ripper, was in the headlines of London. But this pub was just plucked right out of the pages of 1888. And I honestly felt that even though I know it's 2024, I felt that I had been transported back in time. It was magical. And this magic continued to stay with me and with the tour all the way to the end. And I started taking pictures. I was so shocked by this experience I had seeing this pub. I didn't even take a picture of it. But as I went on, I continued to take more and more pictures as the night progressed in order to document how amazing this final night in London was. Okay, this is an earlier picture. That's the Whitechapel. It is the Whitechapel district in London. And here's 3 of those 4 pictures that I took. On the one in the bottom left, you can see a church. And look at that blue sky up there. You can see some clouds, but you can see the blue sky in the places where it's cleared. Absolutely phenomenal. In the middle picture, you can see a building. You can see some of the sky. You can also see the moon up there as it's shining through the clouds. And on the right, look at this picture on the right. Isn't that absolutely incredible? It's like I can tell that I captured some of that ambiance of what I was feeling of having been transported back in time 130 years. And here's the 4th picture, and it's got a beautiful resolution. Here is a chapel. Once again, you can see a star up to the left of the spire. Just absolutely gorgeous, that blue in the sky surrounding this chapel. It was a magical night. And I'm very, very glad to have had that experience, as well as all the experiences that I had in London. Here's another picture taken that night. Once the tour was over, we're wandering about trying to find the tube and get back to the hotel. But here was a telephone booth that actually I think did work. And it's got a door that was open. And Wendy went in and took a picture. Look at this picture and look around it and see if you can't feel that same magic that was abroad in the air that night. We then found, fortunately, because we were starving by this time, an Italian restaurant. We're kind of bumbling about trying to find our way back home. We're close, but we're not exactly sure what direction to go. Anyway, we stumbled upon this beautiful restaurant. We went inside, best Italian food I've ever had in my life. It was an incredible ending to an incredible day. And then we're up bright and early the next morning. We got in late. We're up early to fly home. Here are some pictures looking out the windows at Heathrow Airport from our terminal. And once we got there, once we were driven there and dropped off, I look over and you can see this is morning light. Across the way, you can see that there's a castle on the hillside just begging to be explored. That was the final thing that I saw from England, was another castle. It's just amazing what they have. They got castles everywhere. It's incredible. And here we are in the terminal waiting room. And here I am checking something. I think that's my passport there on the left. On the right, they have a horse, not a real horse, but a horse with a blanket on and a lamp stuck on his head. And I thought, I got to get a picture of that. Once again, we're on the flight. Once again, it's first class. Once again, it's incredible, except instead of flying during the nighttime, we're flying during the daytime, which means that on the left, I got tea, the English tea, like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Absolutely sensational. And of course, once again, I'm watching some kind of movie or something there on the show. I think that's where I watched Good Will Hunting. I know I watched that on the way back because I'd never seen that before. And then over here on the picture on the right, there's some chicken with curry. Oh, it was so good. Thank you so much. That is the final slide in the show. A big thank you to you for watching the show, and a bigger thank you to the listener or listeners who gifted us this incredible experience, this trip of a lifetime. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, please leave a comment below. Thank you for joining me. That's about all for tonight. Until next time, this is Radio Free Mormon, signing off the air.